Hello, good afternoon. You're welcome to Agenda on TV3. Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim brothers and sisters. Happy celebration to all of you. We know the Supreme Court ruled that the hosting of the ex-Guantanamo Bay detainees in Ghana is unconstitutional. This has thrown a lot of light, and the debate has reignited or not. We should have or we should have not. With me in the studio this afternoon to discuss the fallout of the Supreme Court's ruling. From far left, we have Mr. Emmanuel Cotin. He's Executive Director, Africa Center for Security and Counterterrorism. In the middle, we have Dr. Joseph Kwabena Mambon Roxon. He's International Relations Expert. And on my immediate left, we have Dr. Emmanuel Odro Osai. He's a political economist and legal practitioner, Dean of Graduate Studies, Institute of Local Government Studies. Welcome, gentlemen, to Agenda. We'll start with you, Dr. Odro Osai. What's your impression so far?
Thank you very much.
Doc, before you start that, let's take a NewsDesk report and then we'll come back and get into the discussion proper. We'll be back shortly.
The two detainees, Mohammed Al-Dube and Mohammed bin Atef, were held in the Guantanamo Bay prison by the United States for more than 14 years for alleged acts of terrorism. In January 2016, the then-President John Mahama admitted them into Ghana following an agreement with the Obama administration after closing the notorious Guantanamo Bay prison. The presence of the former terror suspects in Ghana generated a huge public outcry. President John Mahama allayed the fears of the public.
My administration's decision to permit entry to two former Guantanamo Bay detainees, as well as some refugees from Rwanda, Syria, have been met with fierce resistance. We cannot let the fear of what might be cloud our compassion to make us turn a blind eye to the very real need that exists in our today's world. There are people who no longer have a country to call home, people who have been cleared of charges of all alleged crimes, and people whose only crime is being born in a country whose name is now automatically associated with a group of insurgents terrorizing their fellow countrymen and women. Ghana has had a long history of humanitarianism. We've had a long history of being counted as a leader, not only on the African continent, but also in the entire international community.
Then presidential candidate of the New Patriotic Party, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, was not convinced.
It is yet another case of the failure of leadership by the President of the Republic, and a sad example of his belief that he's answerable to no one, not even to the laws of the Republic, like Section 35 of the Anti-Terrorism Act, Act 762, which as President he is sworn to uphold. That law prohibits the transaction into which he has entered with the United States government. I would have wished that he had found it worthy to consult both of our two former national leaders before he took this grave decision that has consequences for us all.
The Public Affairs Department of the U.S. Embassy did not confirm whether there are legal documents covering the transfer of the two detainees. At his parliamentary vetting in January, Defense Ministerial nominee Dominic Nitewo was asked to state government's position on the detainees.
If you have a very peaceful country, what many people will not want to do is to invite trouble to themselves. And that's why I still think that at the time that His Excellency, the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, made that statement, he made it in the light that there was no need to invite trouble for us, to put our map on the terrorist map at that particular period when Ghana didn't need to do that at that particular time. We've done 1 year now. Intelligence will change. The situation will change. As we sit today, the government at that time analyzed the intelligence and took a decision. It's the same way this government is going to analyze all the intelligence related to these particular people and take a decision.
In a 6-1 majority decision, the Supreme Court ruled that then-President John Dramani Mahama was in breach of Article 75 of the Constitution, which required that all international agreements be brought before Parliament for ratification. The Supreme Court instructed that the agreement be given parliamentary approval within 3 months or the ex-detainees deported upon a failure by Parliament to ratify the agreement. Some pundits have argued that government is caught between a rock and a hard place. Will government seek parliamentary ratification of the agreement? Will ratification of the agreement safeguard the national interests of Ghana? Can Ghana punch above her diplomatic weight by deporting the detainees? The jury is still out.
News desk report, and with me in the studio are my guests, and we're looking at the fallout of the Supreme Court ruling. We'll start with you, Dr. Eric Odrosai. Could the Supreme Court have decided this case differently?
Not at all. I am of the view that the Supreme Court really was invited to give an interpretation to Article 75, and they did that. Let me also clarify something. The Supreme Court never said that it was unconstitutional. The Supreme Court said that they should go back to Parliament for parliamentary approval or ratification. With all these things, please let us look at it from various angles. There are the security issues, there are political issues, and there are legal issues. The legal issues are what is provided for in the Constitution. And as you put it out there, the Constitution is clear that the President may execute or cause to be executed treaties, agreements, or conventions in the name of Ghana. Let us ask ourselves, the agreement or the conclusion that was reached before the Mutu came here, was it a treaty? Was it an agreement or a convention? 2, so Article 75(2) is saying that a treaty, agreement, or convention executed by or under the authority of the President shall be subject to the ratification of Parliament by either an act of Parliament or a resolution of Parliament supported by votes of more than 1/2 of Parliament. There is a lacuna there, I must admit, which was identified by the Constitution Review Commission. It was clear that the Constitution is so generic that it did not give room for the specific areas of treaties that are within the remit of the President and the ones that should go to Parliament, to the extent that it made a recommendation that there is the need for a legislation to be passed to clearly define the categories of treaties and agreements that need to be ratified by Parliament, by an act of Parliament, those that require to be ratified by a resolution of Parliament, and those that Parliament can delegate to the executive for them to act. So I think that the Supreme Court has made their ruling. They want us to go back to Parliament. Let's see what Parliament will say. But it is of interest to me to know the kind of advice that the then Minister of Justice and Attorney General gave to His Excellency the President before the decision was taken. I am really interested in knowing that advice.
Mr. Cotton, Mr. Former Deputy Minister of Interior said something. Let me read that to you. He said, if the President has to keep an eye on securing parliamentary approval for its diplomatic agreements, will it inhibit government from doing timeous foreign relations? What do you think?
Well, thank you, and let me take this opportunity to wish my Muslim brothers Eid Mubarak, and to my Muslim brothers in Sabuba, where I come from, Happy Salah. In fact, I think the Deputy Minister made a very, very important comment, and I think we should view it from the perspective of fighting counter-terrorism globally. You know, as a country, we can't do it on our own. And we cannot run away from one fact. America remains an hegemonic power that when it sneezes, everyone catches the cold. And I am happy for one thing, and like my brother mentioned, the Supreme Court directives were very clear. The Supreme Court is simply asking the executive to go back to Parliament, which is the legislature, for ratification. And if indeed the intentions of the executive then were right, I don't think rectifying this treaty in Parliament would be a problem. So I don't see the hulu-baloo about the Supreme Court ruling. But let me be quick to add one thing. Politics is over. Government is in place. Let's get to work. And it is high time when we are in power or in opposition, we don't play politics with security issues.
You get the impression there's a political twist to this whole thing?
No, not to the ruling. I am talking about the processes that led to where we are. You know, NPP then in opposition saw everything wrong about the decision of the then government, the NDC. Now, NPP is in power and they seem to be dragging their feet. What I want to just put across is that let us eat the humble pie and learn some lessons from some of these things going. And what are the lessons? Any a major opposition party is a government in waiting. So when decisions of this nature is taken, I think it's imperative of any government in power then to do that consultation. I think that consultation didn't take place, and NPP then in opposition didn't have the facts. So they went ghost chasing, and they had to come up with what they said then. Now they are in government, they have the true facts. And, you know, I think that I actually commend the Supreme Court for the judgment they delivered. It's two things. They just want to make sure the executive and parliament powers are checked, and they are only performing their duties as the third arm of government.
Doug, what should the executive do before the documents or the dossier is sent to Parliament for ratification? Must there be some consultation, diplomatic discussions before? What should they do?
Well, good afternoon to your listeners too, and wishing my Muslim brothers, especially those in Bimbila, happy celebrations. I wish them well in today's celebrations and the way forward. What I have to say in terms of the Gitmo 2 that were brought to Ghana is that in terms of the decision taken by the Supreme Court, I believe, in my own thinking, this shouldn't have even gotten to this point of the Supreme Court coming out with a decision.
Why not?
This case should have been dismissed a long time ago, because they had to contribute to beef up the case, the reliefs that those two people were seeking. That is, they asked them on 2 occasions to go back and build upon the case to make them render the judgment they've rendered. And I think it is like helping them to actually make their case, which is not the law. That is not the law. And so the Supreme Court seemed to have also delved into a place that they are not supposed to. They should learn from America. The judiciary, we should be careful in this country that the judiciary does not come one day to control our executive.
But the judiciary is there as a check on the executive and the legislature. And they must do their work.
There are 3 arms
and make
of
sure
government.
that all the arms of government are working effectively.
That is the executive, the judiciary, and what? The legislative. So, when the case was first sent to the Supreme Court, what prevented them from communicating with the executive? Because the executive, the president, with our constitution, is powerful. Even though he's powerful, it doesn't mean he cannot make mistakes or he's omnipotent. But why should this go to the why will it go all the way to a judgment being rendered to sort of embarrass the executive? For me, this decision has embarrassed the executive. It has at least tainted the bilateral relations we have with the United States on the fact that a mere procedural engagement from the Supreme Court to the presidency could have solved this problem. That is one of it. The second is that from the executive, a mere executive instrument could have been executed to also solve this case. One, it doesn't necessarily mean when you sign a bilateral relation with a country, it doesn't mean you should do it before the president takes an action. He can take an action and
then
maybe within a certain time go to Parliament for ratification.
But the executive failed to do that
Well,
a year and a half ago.
Well, what is also wrong from the what? Sometimes the Supreme Court will have to look at the sensitive nature of that case. In fact, in a situation like this, it shouldn't even be made public.
But you can't
shouldn't have been made public.
We can't blame the Supreme Court for the inaction of the executive.
No. It's what I'm saying is
they
that
had a case
it just shows how the collaboration is not there between the three arms of government.
Dr. Dosai, what do you think? And
it just shows.
Yeah, let me explain something. Under international law, there are two things. We have execution of an agreement and then ratification of an agreement.
Sure.
The international standard is that you execute it and it becomes operational after ratification by Parliament. The first stage was met by the president. That is, if there is any bilateral arrangement or agreement between Ghana and the US. The second stage is the ratification. And that is why to start with, I said the Supreme Court never declared it unconstitutional. The Supreme Court said, go to Parliament and satisfy the second part of it, which is the ratification. You know, so that is the angle at which we should take the whole thing. For all you know, we are discussing it. It will go to Parliament, and Parliament will give its blessing. That's it. The learning here for improved governance is that we should have a legislation that will specifically mention the categories of agreements, treaties, and conventions that can go to Parliament for ratification, those that are within the remit of the executive. And as my brother said, you cannot also tighten the executive. Though we have separation of powers, checks and balances should not lead to stifling of government initiative. You know, so I agree with my brother, and we should go back to the Constitution Review Commission's report and the recommendation they made, so that we'll be able to come out with an enabling legislation that will clarify some of these things. Else, the president may think that, well, because the issue is not all that serious, I can't go to Parliament. But who determines whether it is serious or not? So I think that we should be able to separate execution from ratification. Supreme Court is asking for ratification, and that's it.
Don't you think that limited public disclosure may have gotten us to where we are, and moving forward, what level of disclosure should we have on issues like this?
Yes, you see, for national security issues, and these are issues of terrorism, you know, and that's also another matter we need to consider. If indeed the then government had intended to go to Parliament, then the public disclosure would have been there. Because before you go to Parliament, the parliamentarians would have seen the document. But because they never got to Parliament, that is why it seems to me that people think that but nothing is shrouded in secrecy. I want to believe that there is enough documentation. If they are to comply, which they have to, with the order of the Supreme Court, they'll package everything, and the executive will go to the Supreme Court, and that's it.
Mr. Kose, how much disclosure should government give on such issues? Because at that time, some people saw this as a national security issue. Some people saw or perceived there were going to be threats and all that. So how much disclosure?
In fact, if you look at the fight against terrorism globally, I think there was nothing government could do, because otherwise you'll be exposing our intelligence and security agencies. And you will not only be exposing our own, but the other party you are entering into this treaty with. So I think that what brought about this problem was the fact that the government in power then didn't have a broad consultation with the government in waiting, which was the major political party then, which was NPP. So I mentioned this earlier. Those are the things we should be looking at moving on. But after the ruling of the Supreme Court, I am in support of it to the extent that we are making our activities accountable to our own people. And I think that, like Doc mentioned, we should bring our legislation that will separate and give clear directives, the kind of treaties or diplomatic arrangements that the executive can enter into agreement with without going to Parliament. And I think that as far as counterterrorism is concerned, I think it should be one of the agencies that should benefit from this exception, because it is intelligence-based. You realize that over the period, all counterterrorism efforts across the world now is moving away from military to intelligence, because the rationale is that we have to be proactive to prevent the attacks from taking place in the first place. Because more often than not, it has been the reactionary approach where we see a lot of casualties and stuff like that. But what are we taking? What cue are we taking from the message that came from the U.S. Embassy? Exactly. They came clear to say that it is an internal matter for Ghana and they respect our sovereignty. But however, they will continue to engage the government of Ghana. It leaves much to be desired if you look at that from different perspectives. So I would say, in conclusion, that, look, let's learn from what has happened and don't let us go about talking about it like we have always done with other issues. But what is experience? Experience is not what happens to you. What you do with what happens to you, that matters. And we should be looking at that aspect of it.
Dr. Robson, how should we do the engagements? The embassy has spoken, they've given their side of the story, and government has to go to parliament and get this rectified.
I think
within the time, diplomatically,
yes,
what engagement?
I think the government has got a lot to do within these few days moving forward. The Supreme Court has spoken, but like I said, that decision is a serious setback to the president in controlling foreign policy in this country. However, what the government can do now is they have two choices: to either go through parliament as a normal process to ratify this particular agreement with the United States, or for the president to take an executive decision. That means going back to Article 83 and 84 of the Constitution, talking with the national security, assessing the threat level, and looking at the time remaining. I think it's about 6 months left for them to go. And then putting together all the necessary documentation in order to grant them to accept them, and probably if they want to remain in Ghana, and to do so. After all, they are not the only ones that are in Ghana. We have
won't that be in breach of Parliament's ruling?
Well, if their time, what I'm trying to say is that I'm not saying that
Parliament says
before
rectify or send them back.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. The
Supreme Court says rectify or send them back.
The current president, that's what I'm saying. His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo can do two things. He can follow what the Supreme Court has said, or he can write back to the Supreme Court using executive order the other way.
Doctor, you disagree? You disagree?
No, because of the sensitive nature of the issue, it has become public, so public that if it goes back to Parliament now, what will the minority do? The minority will be laughing.
Well, the minority leader has actually spoken, and he says they will do what is in the best interest of the nation. And so it gives the indication that the minority is ready to receive that document for ratification.
I think that as for the Supreme Court's order, I mean, the president has no option than to comply, than to follow it. But then what the president, the executive can do now is, before they go for ratification, they have to do consultation. They have to look at the agreement that was entered into, and if possible, do some engagement with the U.S. government before going to Parliament for the ratification. But I'm very positive that they've been here for over 1 year. Yeah. They have how many months more to go? 6 months. So they will take all those things into consideration. But I think that they should do that which is needful by complying with the Supreme Court order. After doing the consultation, go to Parliament. If Parliament said, look, it's left with only 6 months, let us allow them to be here. However, the aspect of the agreement that gives them the option to choose to stay here after the expiration of the 2 years must be expunged. Then they can go ahead to ratify it. I don't see Parliament saying that they will not ratify, but the government should do its homework well, engage with the people at the other side, especially the U.S., and then if there are areas of the agreement they really want modification, they should initiate the modification order before they go to Parliament. I see Parliament approving it. I mean, they would approve it.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying that by sending the document to Parliament for ratification, they are going to ask the to get more detainees to stay. No, that's a separate document. What I'm trying to say is that they can initially comply with the courts.
That's right.
By going to the Parliament. And I'm glad that the minority has actually accepted that they will work with the majority to get the document ratified.
Well, he said to do what is in the best interest
of the country. I am saying, but my caution is that we have to learn from this, and that such things are sensitive issues that you don't bring to the public domain. And we erred severally when we started bringing all these issues to the public domain and allowing people on the street to comment, and especially the media going to Makola and asking Makola women, what do you think of this? What do you think about this? When people even didn't have a clue about their presence in Ghana. We should be careful. It embarrasses the United States as well as embarrasses Ghana.
This thing is going to go to Parliament. Yes,
have we also considered the consequences of taking these get more detainees back in the diplomatic arrangements we have with the U.S. in the fight against terrorism? Look, when these people came...
We'll discuss that in the second segment. We'll look at that. Okay. What if Parliament does
and let me just wrap up something here.
But what is very important is that typically in Parliament, we see the minority and the majority taking partisan positions when it comes to things.
And this
How
is
should they go with this particular one?
That's why I was a bit having difficulty with my senior brother, Doug. In fact, I mentioned here, politics is over. Government is in place. Let's put Ghana before any other consideration. And if you listen to the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, he seems to compromise on certain positions. And I am of the view that, look, in this, there are no winners, there are no losers. Ghana is the winner or the loser, depending on the way we handle it. And look,
disagreeing with him.
Dr. Roxy, what do we stand to lose?
No, we stand to lose, in fact, a lot. Because it is not Ghana alone who is holding up. Who's holding these detainees? We have 11 other countries in Africa. In all, 203
Must we
countries.
necessarily toe the line of other countries?
No, in our interest, if we are today, or if we are making noise about these detainees, that means we don't have the systems. We do not have the systems at all in place. Meaning, we don't have internal checks as to whether we can handle issues like this. And like the president said before, Ghana has always been a leader in Africa, and we must uphold to those principles. Sometimes test things that have not been tested in Africa. If we are to be talking about we are the champion of democracy and all that. Remember, democracy is not a whitewash. You need to go through a lot of drilling. You need to go through a lot of test cases before you achieve that credential. So we must be very careful. Like my brother is saying here, we must remove politics. I don't know who advised the then presidential candidate of the NPP when he made those comments. If I come tomorrow, I'll give them 3 days or so. I'm not quoting him, but that was what it implied, that he will send them back. Who advised him then? After all, the MP now, who is the foreign minister, was then.
But his biggest challenge was that
we must be very careful. We must be very careful. In light of Article 83 and 84, I think the national security should have been the best to determine. And I think they advised the president, the then president, in that light. And I think that was why those decisions were made. And I think, like what my brother said, there should have been a collaboration between the then government and the other political parties, so that this wouldn't have come about.
Well, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll look at what if Parliament does not rectify their stay in Ghana. We'll be back shortly. Yeah, welcome back. This is Agenda. We are looking at the fallout of the Supreme Court's ruling on the 2 ex-Guantanamo Bay detainees. Doug, how should Parliament position itself? Because we know the issues with opposition, minority, majority, and how they usually deal with issues that come to them. How should they position themselves for this particular one?
Parliament should position itself as an institution that checks the executive. Parliament should position itself as an institution that truly represents the 25 and so over million Ghanaians in this country and put the interests of the nation at the utmost level in considering this ratification. Parliament should go to ask for further and better particulars on this agreement Parliament should, after securing all information, take the best decision that meets the best interest of the Republic of Ghana without jeopardizing our international relations with other countries.
Dr. Roxane, what are the things that will hurt us most if Parliament does not do it, considering the diplomatic relations and image that Ghana has out there?
Well, if Parliament does not comply or put itself in place to ratify the decision, as my brother is saying, then we stand to lose a lot of respect on the African continent. People looking up to us, Ghana, as leaders in so many areas, will now say, hey, because the 11 other countries, like I said before, 11 other countries are holding these people. And worldwide, 203, including Ghana, countries are harboring these Gitmo detainees. It will go to tell the outside world that we are not prepared to, we listen too much, or our media leaks so much sensitive issues to the public in a way that there's a fear, and as a result, Parliament is afraid to ratify. But I'm very confident with what my brother said.
Why should
they will ratify it to make us look good. And if they make us look good, I think there will be other things that will come. Remember, bilateral relations with America is very important. Our highway, George W. Bush highway, they gave us the money. So many other things they've given money to Ghana to do. And all these bilateral relations come with perks. We don't know what they will extend to Ghana after the Gitmo 2. We've been able to harbor them and successfully, we don't know. They might decide to build a very good maximum prison for us.
Doc, are you saying,
are
you saying that we need the U.S. more than they need us, and so we should be cautious?
Of course, we are a developing country. We need the U.S. more than they need us.
We are a sovereign state. We should take decisions in the best interest of this country.
State, yes, I agree with the other two panelists that yes, we need to strengthen our institutions. That's what we need to do. We need to. Will America come and do that for us? If we need to be able to take better decisions so that we don't end up with a decision like this from the Supreme Court,
so shouldn't it be more? Shouldn't it be more of taking a decision that's in the best interest of the state rather than taking a decision that is preserving the relationship with America?
Yes, I think what we have just stated, it translates to the point that we are not trying to destroy the relationship between Ghana and the United States. Neither are we also trying to smash the sovereignty of Ghana. We don't want to do that. What Ghana wants is what Ghana wants. The parliamentarians have taken the votes of Ghanaians to come and exactly perform what Ghanaians want. But we must also be compassionate, like the former president said, President Mahama said. We are not in an island country in the world. We have neighbors, and we shouldn't think that, Syria was a very peaceful country. Today, Syrians are everywhere in the world. So we shouldn't think that such a situation, I pray that it doesn't come, will not meet us one day. We'll also be seeking residence in other countries. We should be very careful. So we should muddle the two very swiftly, like Dr. Drew said, so that we don't offend the United States as much as we don't also stumble upon our sovereignty. That's what I'm trying to say.
Mr. Kutin, worst case scenario.
Well,
it goes to Parliament and it's not ratified.
If
worst case scenario.
My opinion was to be sought on this, I would tell government and Parliament, that the executive and the legislature, to do everything in their power to rectify this agreement and make these detainees remain in this country. You know why? Ghana would have been counted very tall among countries that respect human rights. Where America had fallen, Ghana has stood tall to give, on compassionate ground, to give abode to these two. You see, during the heydays of terrorism, especially in Afghanistan and Pakistan, there were criminal gangs who were arbitrarily arresting people and handing them over to the Americans for ransom. And this group of people are part of those unfortunate ones that were caught in the web. So just imagine that these people were held for 14 plus years without trial. It sends a clear signal that they were not of any threat to America, but at that point they didn't know what to do with them. And let us not forget one thing. America is a big country. It doesn't mean America cannot make mistakes. That is why we are a human institutions. Ghana can correct the ills of America. And I think that if we unite as a country and get this rectified, it will rather bring more respect to Ghana than the other way around.
Doc, these detainees have stayed with us, ex-detainees have stayed with us for a year and a half. They have 6 more months to go. And the Supreme Court says Parliament should ratify within 3 months. So let's say 3rd month, and then it's ratified. They stay for 3 more months. If they want to continue to stay in Ghana, how should we position ourselves to receive them?
Well, it will depend on what the agreement says. I'm sure there will be clear provisions in the agreement as to what happens after their stay in Ghana. Now, that opens a window for the current administration to negotiate with the United States of America. But as a country, if our security and intelligence agencies may have observed them, and as the government rightly issued a statement through the Minister of Information that they've comported themselves well, if we think they've comported themselves well, then we need to give them permanent abode here. Why not? But with caution, so we are able to manage them.
What should we be cautious about?
We should be cautious about the activity, their network, and I'm sure the intelligence institutions are doing it. They are monitoring them. So if they want to stay here, that's fine. But that everything depends on Parliament, because we have delegated that power to Parliament to exercise it on behalf of the good people of Ghana.
And do you agree with Mr. Kutsin that we must we necessarily push for this ratification?
It will depend on the information made available to Parliament. And that is why I'm appealing for full disclosure. I'm appealing that, everything about this particular agreement should be made available to Parliament. And when it gets to Parliament, I would expect Parliament to put politics aside and look at the supreme interest of the nation and what is good for us. That is what we expect of them. So it is both ways. The government or the executive must do full disclosure on this matter. Parliament must put politics aside and take a decision that is in the best interest of Ghana.
Mr. Kutsin, yes. These 2 ex-detainees, as issued by government, they do not pose any security threats as of today. They've comported themselves. And the Supreme Court says we should go and rectify. What if the minority plays mischief? We are not expecting them to play mischief, but what if they play mischief with us? Well, I've asked this question a few times, but what if?
Why only the minority?
Why only the minority?
Because we know the majority and the minority, sometimes they go different ways.
Then if both
so
plays
what
mischief?
If
you see,
there's mischief played with this issue?
When they brought these detainees, ex-detainees, my organization, me in particular, was very loud that they never pose any threat to this country.
Why were you so sure?
Because I was looking at it from the perspective of the earlier statement I made, that we need to stand tall where America has fallen. And truly, to our prediction, they have really comported themselves. The minority should not be an issue now, because they were the people who put the stick in the pot.
And the majority should not.
So I think that, like Doc said, let's rise above partisanship and look at what is best for Mother Ghana. And I'm not sure the minority you are so conscious of that they may play mischief will do that. If you listen to the minority leader on one of your sister stations, he made it clear that look, they as the government in waiting, that's how he put it, will look at what is best for the country. And I pray that we will hold him to task by his word. And I think that in the interest of this country, let's do consensus building between the institutions that are involved and look at what is best for Mother Ghana. But nevertheless, let's learn from this so that we don't have another to get more. Like Dov mentioned, the Ebola thing, did we go to Parliament for ratification? No. And that was even quite dangerous than the two detainees. So I think that it's just the process of our institutions learning to work together and gelling together and not putting some glass boundaries between themselves. With that way, we can reap the benefits of the democracy we are so craving for.
We'll go for a break. When we come back, we'll round up the discussion. We'll be back shortly. Yeah, welcome back. This is still Agenda on TV3. We are looking at the fallout of the Supreme Court's ruling. Dr. Roxon, how should we position ourselves as a nation moving forward?
Well, moving forward, we've learned a lot from the Supreme Court ruling and the ultimatum of 3 months to ratify whether they stay or they're out. But moving forward, we need to let our institutions know that this is not good in terms of the communications that could have been existing between the Supreme Court and the presidency, as well as the presidency and Parliament, so that whatever sensitive, because there are certain sensitive issues like the Gitmo 2 that shouldn't have been made public, that even the press should have been limited. The press, they should have given limited access to the press in terms of the information they will have on the Gitmo 2. Because before they came in, remember, there was a lot of secrecy. And the president didn't take the decision by himself then. He consulted the national security and other people at the background, and even from sources, Imani Africa, and all certain, they were all called, yes, Imani Ghana, they were all being told that this was what the government was going to do, and that the people were on the way coming to Ghana. And that was why most of them didn't come out to oppose during the election time. So there must be a lot of consultations. There should be communication. And I think even, I've always done that, even at the Supreme Court level, there should have been a communication when these two individuals sued. The Supreme Court should have communicated with the presidency and dismissed this case for lack of information, for lack of evidence, so that this thing will be kept so secret and resolved behind the scene to avoid the embarrassment that it has caused this country and the United States. I believe that moving forward, the presidency, we must come clean, and we must also note that it is not everything that should go through Parliament. The Constitution does not say that everything needs to go through Parliament.
The Constitution does not give us clarity
on
what should go and what not should go.
Then if there is nothing like that, they need to give that clarity as to what, because there are executive instruments that the president can always use. Executive orders can always be used also within the foreign policy arena. It doesn't necessarily mean that everything that is foreign policy should go through Parliament. And so we have parliamentary approval as well as executive instruments. And I think our president should learn, because if you read history, people have even transported bombers and armored cars from one continent to the other through executive and declared war on Germany without parliamentary approval.
Doug,
so you can do a lot of things without
with executive powers. Our president has a lot of powers, but how should we position, how should presidency, executive position itself such that we don't get into some of these legal issues?
And I think we should pay attention to the advice of the Constitution Review Commission, and they recommended that there's a need for clarity on the specific areas of agreement that should go to Parliament for Act of Parliament. that's for resolution, and that can be delegated by Parliament to the President. And I think if we are able to resolve this issue, to prevent us from getting there, that is not the only one. The other area, like the African Union government, for instance, there's no provision in the Constitution in that respect. And the other one is also declaration of war. At the moment in our Constitution, the President does not need parliamentary approval to declare war, which is dangerous. So we should also look at all of that. So there is a need for an enabling legislation. Normally, if the Constitution makes this specific provision, Chapter 8 is an entrenched provision, in the Constitution. So you need specific legislation to operationalize that particular provision, and that's what we need. Once we are able to clarify it, as and when the issue arises, the President will consult the law and know that this category of issues relates to those that can go to Parliament. These ones, it falls within my remit, and I can act on it.
How soon should we get this?
Within the shortest possible time, because if we use the executive instruments...
Shortest possible time meaning?
Shortest possible time within the tenure of this administration.
That's 4 years.
Are you saying that our president doesn't need parliamentary approval to declare war?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. In our Constitution,
there are two areas to this.
He doesn't.
No, waging war is different from declaring war.
I'm talking about declaring war.
Yes. That is dangerous.
It is.
Because you can wage war without parliamentary approval.
But to declare war, yes, you don't need parliamentary approval, and that is the bit we need to correct. So I think within the shortest possible time.
But you make it look like the shortest possible time could be 4 years within this.
No, what I'm saying is that we have a current administration. We have a current administration in power. Once this issue is there, and the Constitution Review Commission has already made a recommendation, the white paper has accepted it. So what they need to do is review the white paper, implement the white paper, do the constitutional amendment, and then come out with the legislation. In fact, if you come out with a bill, in the next 1 year, we should be able to have this running. Yes.
And then that will save us from a lot of embarrassment. Well, in moving forward, what should we do?
To me, governance is a continuous process. It
and
doesn't
we are
matter
not an
who
island.
took the decision. Ghana, if indeed we want to be respected in the international community, we need to respect our international treaties and agreements we sign. That is the bottom line. And what I would say is that the now opposition party, they were the people who took this very decision. So more or less, they have no any moral justification not to press on for this ratification to pass. Indeed, if they truly meant well for Ghana. The now government, who was then opposition and making too much noise, can be pardoned because probably they didn't have the facts then. Now they are in government, they have the facts. So to me, getting this thing ratified should not be a problem if indeed the two political parties mean well for Ghana.
All right, you have a few minutes to wish some Muslim brothers.
Yes, like I said.
Eid Mubarak.
Yes. Let me wish my senior brother, Dr. Ali Nancha. In fact, he gave me a lot of legal education on this subject even before I came here. So let me take this opportunity to wish you, senior, I salute you and the family. I'll be coming for the rice. And more especially for my my district, Sabuba, where I come from.
That's 30 seconds.
Yes.
You've gone to...
I wish them well.
Okay.
And then
I would say that all what we are talking is in my book here. What the president should have done, what the foreign affairs should have done, what the interior minister should have done, all is in my book. So I'll be launching it very soon.
You're publicizing the book on our network. We'll give you a bill.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
We'll give you a bill.
These are the pegs that come with it.
These are
the pegs that come with it. I've not launched it yet though. I'll be launching it, but this is very good for universities doing political science and international relations. So that they are able to determine, because people these days, those who work in government, you find out someone who has not even finished law school or something, you see, they're very close to the president. So when things like that come, how do you advise the president? And that is why we are all in this mess.
We need guidance.
We need
guidance. Well, in a few lines, rounding off.
Yes, all Muslims in Ghana, happy Eid Mubarak, especially the Minister for Local Government, Haji Alima, former MP for Salaga, Alhaji Ibrahim Day, and then all the people at the Institute of Local Government Studies. May Allah be with them.
And Doug, moving forward, what should you do? Rounding it for us.
We should eschew partisan politics in all of this. Let us make sure that Parliament work as a team through the ratification process. And I would expect the majority and the minority leaders in their concluding statement to make it a point to draw the House's attention that there is the need for a legislation to be passed to clarify the issues of which areas of treaties, agreements, or conventions that should come to Parliament, and the areas that falls within the remit of the executive arm of government. I advise the whole of Ghana that we should trust our executive, we should trust the Parliament, we should allow institutions of state to work. We should understand that the Supreme Court is just playing its role as a check on the other arms of government. That is what we need, and that is how government
Trust is important. Doc, he mentioned something that I want you to conclude. Yes. Trust is very important, but we need to see these institutions doing their work. Yes. Then it's easy for us to trust and
trust and believing that people must be patriotic. When you are taking a decision, it must be in the national interest, Ghana and nothing else, not your selfish interest. I think if we begin to do that, and working even for the Ghanaian institutions, you work as a Ghanaian, be patriotic, then we'll be able to take decisions long term. That is why some constitutions can last for over 200 years.
Patriotism is really...
Let's start being citizens than being spectators.
Okay, like President Akufo-Addo said.
That's the conclusion. We should be patriotic as Ghanaians, because once you are a patriotic Ghanaian, you take decisions in the best interest of the nation. Thank you very much, Dr. Eric Odrosai, who is just sitting by me. Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph Kwabena Mombaroksen, and thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel Kotin. And thank you for being part of this discussion. My name is Deborah Kwabla. God willing, same time next week, I will be here with another discussion. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy your holiday and have a productive week. Bye.